Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF. Sean Haney here for a Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. We're joined right now by Chuck Penner of Leftfield Commodity Research. Hey, Chuck, how's it going?
Good to see you, Sean.
Good to talk to you. Yeah, so Chuck, let's talk about harvest first. Real challenge, and it's really probably reflecting in some of the quality that's out there in this pulse crop.
Yeah, it's been really ugly. I think we're kind of in the late stages now. I was just looking at the last crop reports from Alberta and Saskatchewan, and there's probably, I'm going to say about 5% left. And that's the hardest 5% to get just because it's laying flat or stuck in the mud or something. But yeah, it's been a really long haul, and it's been tough. And for the most part, I've found, and I guess of course this is coming through Twitter feeds and things like that and pictures, but there's been some pleasant surprises about the quality of the crop, but that doesn't mean it's good. It's just they thought it would be a lot worse. So there is some sprouting, and there is a lot of earth tag and that kind of stuff. But, and it's, of course, it's much worse for green lentils, green peas, because there you need the visual distinguishability and, the really good visual look. It's not great for red lentils or yellow peas either because, wrinkling and things like that can cause problems with processing and lower your output and those kind of things. But it's been really, really tough.
How about from a yield standpoint? The quality has been tough, but have yields been above what we thought we would have if you think back to like June?
Yeah, back to June for sure. Then we were in the disaster scenarios and those kind of things. And it's been very surprising how that's come around. The yields that we got from StatsCan back in September, and then some of the provincial ag yields have been, I would say better than we were expecting earlier. And it's actually making supplies look a little bit heavier yet, which, is not such a great thing.
Compared to like the last 5 years, where do we fit in that sort of historical description?
Well, in terms of production, we've got a situation where where pea production is probably, I'm going to pull open a spreadsheet here. Just pardon me for a moment. But yeah, production is probably the second largest on record. And so we've got a very big pea crop on the way. A little more greens this year because last year we had a really nice premium on greens. But it's a situation where we've got a lot of peas to chew through. To me, it's not necessarily a disaster that way. Supply glut, I wouldn't call it quite that. There's always been. Well, we can talk about demand a little bit later, but so far the demand signals are not all that bad for peas, and for lentils we've got a big crop as well too. Back in spring when we had red lentil prices at 16 cents and we had even the greens were dropping down. I really thought we'd see a drop in acreage, and it ended up that farmers planted the same amount of lentils that they did last year, and yields are up. So we've got a bigger crop yet than we had last year. So what that tells me is that we used to think of pulses as being in and out of rotations, based on strictly on price signals, but they've really become a more steady part of those rotations and more important that way.
Okay, so we've covered supply. We definitely have a lot of supply to deal with. Do we have the demand domestically and specifically internationally to chew up some of this supply?
Well, I think we do more so on peas than we do for lentils. It's a little bit more of a friendly picture. There's been, of course we have the situation in India, and, we talk about that as being a little bit difficult. For somehow, some exporters are still able to get more peas into India than what the official rules allow. And so, we're getting some peas into India, but really the focus is still on China. For peas, especially for yellow peas. And there was always talk about, well, we're going to see a big drop off in Chinese demand because they're not buying for feed anymore, blah, 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 and those kind of things. But the regular fractionation demand that they have is still growing. And so I was just, this morning, I just pulled open the September China pea imports. And we're tracking along right where we were last year, which was a record by a wide margin. So we've already, so for January to September, we've shipped 1.3 million tons of peas into China, and we're actually on pace to do that, which I tend to be more optimistic than most, but even for me, it was a bit of a surprise. And others keep saying, well, no, there, it's all going down the tubes, and and we're going to be facing these monster supplies. It's not panning out that way. So far, fingers crossed, we're hanging on to that China business, and Canada has almost an exclusive hold on that China business. Almost nobody else is shipping into there.
What's the main use of peas in China then, Chuck?
Well, they use a little bit for feed, but for the most part, they're fractioning them into starch and protein.
Okay.
And when we first started this bigger business with China, they were splitting them up, and the desirable product was the starch, because they use that in their noodles and their buns and things like that. So it replaced some other starches in those products. But now with the protein craze, of course, now the protein has taken on an added value as well too. So I don't have the data to back this up, but I've been told is that because right now in North America, there's this plant protein boom. It's coming from peas that we ship to China and bring the protein back here to go into those products. So they're keeping the starch domestically and some of the protein probably too, but a good chunk of that protein is coming back to North America.
And what about lentils? You said that's a little bit lesser of a good story.
Well, there we are more reliant on India, especially for red lentils. For green lentils, not so much. It's that demand is spread more widely. But for red lentils, we are depending on India. And yeah, we are moving red lentils into India, even with a 30% tariff. So we are doing some of that business. And it's actually picked up a little bit lately as well, too. And we see bids now, red lentil bids 18 to 19 cents. So it's moving higher, which is a really nice story. But there are some warning signals from there. They may have a better Rabi crop coming up because they've got good soil moisture to start planting. And there's more protectionist rumblings coming out of India. So it's possible that they may actually raise the barriers on lentils coming into the country.
Similar to some of the other commodities, thinking about their lack of export into China, the lentil crop, its issue with China is kind of a reminder that we need to make sure we have as much a diversified market as possible for some of these commodities.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you think about things even like chickpeas, for example. We had a situation where the last couple of years, especially for the lower grades, suddenly the pet food market was an opportunity. Of course, now with the FDA in the States, they've come up with this weird ruling or weird caution that doesn't really say anything, but scares the daylights out of anybody who's crazy about their dogs, which is most pet owners. But those kind of opportunities, absolutely. So we're going to see this more and more especially in peas, see more domestic use, and it's just taking a little longer to come on stream than some people would like.
So as you look ahead, or you think ahead to 2020, have you started to think a little bit about what happens with acres? Because canola is facing the same kind of higher carry-out situation as lentils, for example. So how does all this shake out, do you think, in your preliminary forecast?
Well, it would be very preliminary, but again, this year, when prices were lower, in 2019, when prices were lower, we didn't see the real drop off. In fact, we saw sizable gains in pea acreage and in lentil acreage. So again, I don't know that we're going to see large shifts, and I'm not expecting massive stockpiles at the end. And I actually, just regarding canola, I'm not nearly as bearish on that as some others are. But that's okay. Differences of opinion are good. So I would say that we'll probably see fairly steady acreages in this next year. And if China continues to buy peas at the rate that they are, it could actually get a little bit tighter by the end of the year. And so, peas might look like a better option. Even now, we're just finishing harvest. And we have green pea bids back up to $9. And even yellows are starting to edge a little bit higher as well too. So it's certainly, we're not in a depressed market, and red lentils are, like I said, coming up to 18, 19 cents. Greens, large greens are 22, 23 cents. So it's not a really depressing type of a market. I think we've got this general impression that it's awful, it's awful, it's awful. But
Right.
the price thing is telling us a bit of a different story.
$8.50 to $9 yellows for on
Greens,
peas, or sorry,
greens,
that was on greens. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to get you too excited there.
Yeah. Because I was like, wow, that pencils.
Yeah.
So
But we're getting up closer to the yellows have been edging higher, up a couple of bits in the last week or two as well too. So it's coming off the seasonal lows. We always get in this really negative mindset right during the seasonal lows. It's never going to come back, and
yeah.
yeah, it always does. Maybe not as much as we'd like, but it does come back. And so it's important not to get too carried away by the way things are looking right in the middle of harvest.
Yeah, very good points there about the harvest pressure on prices, and make sure you plan your marketing accordingly, knowing that, because it seems to be that way most years.
Yeah, there's a reason why seasonal trends are trends, is because
Yeah.
it's very normal behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit it on earlier that we're seeing lots of interest in pulse acres because people are seeing those agronomic benefits. It's a part of the rotation now.
Yeah, and the other one, of course, that seems to be getting a little bit of traction, but it's a bit of a chicken and egg kind of a thing, is faba beans. There's lots of interest in those agronomically, although they've had some frost challenges, with quality and those types of things. But one of the neat stories is that Roquette, who is building the pea plant at Portage, is now talking about using faba beans. I have to let you know that about 2 or 3 years ago, I was meeting with them, and I said, you really should be considering faba beans. So I don't know if I can take any credit, but I'll take credit.
Hey, Chuck, we'll give you credit. Don't worry about it. Hey, we've been talking to Chuck Penner of Leftfield Commodity Research based out of Winnipeg. Chuck, thanks a lot.
No problem, Sean. Talk to you later.